Hello and welcome to some more Star Citizen news and Alpha 3.0 Burndown. This week there's been a lot of movement with the Alpha 3.0 patch, getting it more ready from Evocati to PTU, as well as some info on Procedural Cities and how EMPs are being developed, or been developing in the game. So there is currently 197 bugs and tasks that require completion from the 3.0 Alpha Evocati build to go to the PTU build. This is actually significantly down from last week's 352 bugs and tasks. They've also checked in over 736 updates to the 3.0 branch, so there's lots of improvements and stuff being made there. However, this bug list might be a bit deceptive. They are now working on an MVP, or minimum viable product list, to try and further refine those number of 197 bugs and issues further downwards to get the PTU out as early as possible. So expect to see a lot of movement on bugs and issues over the coming weeks in a push towards getting as much done by Christmas as possible. I'm still hoping that we get the PTU into more people's hands, that 3.0 patch, by Christmas. They've transitioned from sprints to weekly reviews now in regards to finishing up a lot of the work for 3.0. So with reviews, they look at features and how they function in-game and then check to see if there's any more work required. Whether it be additional features or bugs, it's very much a hands-on test of how these kind of mechanics play in real terms. It looks like they've also resolved all the shopping bugs now as well. They had over 150, which they seem to have done over the week. The feature is now in review, and hopefully from that we will see the feature be feature complete by next week, or maybe just a couple of tweaks necessary and then that feature is done. Shops may be the same brand like Dumpers Depot in 3.0 but can have completely different stocks. They recently added all the size 2 items to shops as well. Shopkeepers were a challenge apparently to get functional, as it's the first iteration of their subsumption tech and foundation of future NPCs and AI. Getting everything tweaked with shopping, like heights of objects, the try-ons, the interactions, has taken a long time, and it's now looking like it's almost complete. They are working on occlusion with cargo as well, so this is how they store items or vehicles in your cargo bay. So if you've got a vehicle, and then how do they put cargo around that vehicle? How much space does it take up? If you've got cargo in your cargo bay already, how can they move that cargo or put that cargo so that you can get to a vehicle that you've just placed there as well without blocking? Evocati has access to some of the missions intended for 3.0, but there are still more that they're currently finishing up. They got 7 completed over last week, and there's 4 more that they're getting done at the moment. Once those missions are complete, they will focus on the smaller bugs and issues on the missions feature, getting them all finished out. They have added automated turrets to some of the space stations. And this is a big thing for multiple reasons. They're going to deal with griefers, pad campers, as well as pirates that come too close. This is an important thing as well for another reason. Armistice Zones will be removed from the game, either possibly in 3.0, but more likely to be 3.1, allowing players to potentially fire and do odd things in public areas, but security, police, defences, ships, turrets, and NPCs will all be present to prevent players from running rampant, as well as a reputation and repercussion system. So you're not going to want to randomly shoot people because you'll get fines, you'll become an outlaw in that area, your stuff might get confiscated if it's already landed in Port Olisar, stuff like that. If you've got all your ships stored in Port Olisar and you're an outlaw there, that's a bad thing. Lots of improvements have been made to the groups and friends lists and playing together. Joining a mission, for example, will now put everyone in the same group in a radio band together and take the mission together, so you'll all hear the audio and info on that mission without it spilling out to the rest of the server. The remaining item system 2.0 ships, the flyable ones anyway, and UIs are all getting worked on for completion as well now. It looks like they're trying to get beds set up for 3.0 as well, and that would be the way that you'd log out safely. The idea being that if your player logs out in a ship with a bed, when you're just in random open space or on a planet or whatever, you and your ship will despawn safely, and then you can log back on, and you'll log back on there, and your ship will respawn there with you. Without a bed, and not in a safe area, when you despawn or when you log out, it might take a little while longer for your ship to despawn, or you might be in a more vulnerable state. To prevent this, land somewhere that has a air traffic control system, like Port Olisar or Grimhex, or is safe, or hide your ship very well. They are further tuning the flight model, Gravlevs, and optimizing the IFCS. Last week they went through all the flyable ships and tweaked the range of SCM speeds, mostly upwards, so ships have more velocity to play with again now. This is going back to basically previous patches where the actual flight model was pretty fast. They are working on atmospheric flight tuning and drag simulation as well, so we should have a lot more of a different feel in atmosphere as well, less floaty, like we saw in some of the previous demos. Some performance improvements have been made to ships, and this has also had a knock-on effect of helping some of the ships not lose control. They were fixing loads of bugs with that. They are getting the first iteration of the star map working, and then polished, but it's going to get a lot more work and improvement over coming patches beyond 3.0, based on player feedback, usage, and additions that they want to make. Persistence has had a lot of work as well, just getting inventories, ships, item changes, all keeping their states. A few edge case bugs have appeared as well, with particular ships not showing up in players' inventories, or random items detaching. The Mobiglass will be able to track all of your infantry and ship items, cargoes, and pretty much everything else you own, but also be able to query, filter, and search through them. They want you to be able to have as stable and optimized experience as possible when 3.0 goes to PTU. They are really polishing that. I would say unnecessarily so, but they want to. I suppose they're getting experience at delivering patches. They've also been working through all the bugs that have been submitted through the crash handler by Evocati. They are cutting and culling as much of the data as possible that doesn't need to be sent over networks, with serialized variables, bind culling, loads of network improvements and optimizations. And this may very well lead to much higher performance and higher player counts in 3.0. They have also been running tests with much more powerful server hardware, 72-core servers, as Amazon Web Services allows them to a huge infrastructure that's also scalable to Star Citizen's needs. Procedural Cities. So there was a feature on Procedural Cities in ATV that didn't actually give us that much more info than we've already seen in the CitizenCon demo, but I'll give you a quick synopsis of some of the extra info there. Procedural Cities will continue to improve with more buildings, tile sets, integration into more biomes, entirely different architecture. There is also going to be large explorable sections of cities and interiors, but not entire planets worth. They can build cities to look however they want pretty damn quickly, placing tiles, prefab kits, and districts of certain types, whether they be industrial, commercial, residential, transport, or they can have an entirely procedural generated area. But whether it's procedural generated or procedurally assisted or entirely placed, these will be the same for every player and not change when you visit them, though I suppose changes might happen with areas getting run down, dirty, getting criminal elements. Graffiti might start to appear on things, broken windows and that sort of stuff might appear, or conversely, the areas might look more clean, getting to look better, and this is going to be based on what the planet's doing, how the economy's going, what these areas are producing, transporting, and that sort of stuff. So there's going to be reasons behind the way they look. Landing zones will have the highest density and highest quality of assets, and are much more likely to have hero assets, which are like unique, like the statue in Levski. They are also adding more NPC and city interactions, as well as public transport, monorails, ships, and general traffic around, NPCs walking around, ships flying, little bikes and all that sort of stuff moving around. They may add in dynamic and mission pop-up zones and areas around city planets as well, so you take a mission, there might be a special area that appears, or a marker that appears that takes you to another high-quality area that you wouldn't have otherwise been able to see. They will be working on alien cities in the future as well. Just assume that they're going to be entirely different tile sets when they generate these cities. EMPs were also briefly talked about on Spectrum. So EMPs are explosions that deal a large amount of distortion damage with a distance fall-off. They are a charge weapon, and the amount of damage it does and the range it does it scales exponentially as they charge up. An EMP charge for 10 seconds is much more potent than an EMP charge for 5. An EMP can be charged for just 1 second, and that's not going to do much damage or range. It's going to be pretty weak. Internally, they're calling EMPs distortion pulses. A ship that gets hit by a distortion pulse will first take damage to its shields. If a shield face is brought down to 0, the remaining damage is then passed to the items in the area that it hits. The items then scale this distortion damage received based on how active that system is, or what it's throttling power-wise. So, for example, if you had your power plant or your engine set to 10%, then that would reduce incoming EMP damage by 90%, if you see what I mean. And turning that item off would make you entirely immune to distortion damage on that item. So a missile that gets hit by a pulse will continue to do whatever its most recent action was. That might result in it overshooting the target or spinning out. If the missile lasts long enough to recover from the distortion damage, it will try and relock or resume its normal behaviour, but most likely in those cases they'll run out of fuel and die. A person that gets hit by a pulse will have the suit systems, the little tiny components, kind of fizzle out, but they recover quite quickly, is the idea there. So yeah, you might lose your EVA movement, but that will come back pretty damn quickly. If you think there's a risk of a distortion pulse hitting you, you should keep your distance and consider managing your power to mitigate those risks. For example, if you have 2 power plants, and this is where redundancy comes in, you could turn one of them off to ensure that you're perfectly immune to that pulse damage with that particular system, and then turn it on after that detonation happens. This is really cool as well, because EMPs are going to probably affect the EMPer, the person that's generating them, in the same way. Obviously, the person that's generating the EMP can take some precautions. They can have systems that are specifically good against EMP blasts. They can put in more subcomponents, but they can also have these redundant systems and knowledge that they're going to use an EMP, which will allow them to turn other systems off and get prepared for an EMP attack. And that's what I quite like about it, the EMP kind of gameplay that they're now going to be putting in. And it's quite interesting there. So tell me what you think about that. Also, the latest Nvidia drivers, if you've got a GeForce graphics card, 388.31, have given me some pretty good extra performance in Star Citizen, so check those out. I think it's worth updating. Please tell me in the comments if you have similar gains as well. Every month we give away a ship. For November, it's a massive Pioneer base building ship donated by our featured org Matadors. If you're looking for an outlaw group to join that are active now and are going to be active in 3.0 and do piracy and that sort of jazz, then check out the links below. All you need to do is be subscribed to my YouTube channel and comment on any of my Star Citizen videos during a particular month to be in for a chance of winning those monthly giveaways. So comment today to be in for a chance to win that Pioneer. Do you have any questions about the news, about Alpha 3.0, about Star Citizen's development in general, or anything that you want to ask me? A special thank you to my Patreons who allow me to create the amount of content I do. If you're interested in becoming one of them, you can find the link to Patreon as well as everything else we've discussed below. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, as it really does help me, and I will see you in the verse.